российско-американских отношений. Please, Mr. Нэппер, the floor is yours.
Спасибо большое за ваши добрые слова. Это мне большая честь встретиться с вами здесь в университете. Вы знаете, что я приехал сюда, в Москву, впервые, это уже до 1975 года, по назначению американского посольства в качестве вице-консула. Это, конечно, много лет назад. Но все-таки имел возможность работать по вопросам отношений между Соединенными Штатами и Советским Союзом, и потом Россией и другими странами бывшего Советского Союза. И служил, как вы слышали, как американским послом в Латвии и Казахстане. Поэтому это большая возможность для меня еще раз посетить Россию и сегодня проводить диалог с вами. То есть, как было бы хорошо, если бы были бы вопросы и ответы в большинстве. Но, может быть, я могу сказать несколько слов о положении сейчас в Соединенных Штатах. Кто здесь говорит или понимает по-английски? Да? Все? Хорошо, тогда I will speak in English then for a while, and we'll test your English, see how good you are in English. And then we can go with question and answer, вопросы и ответы, и на русском, на английском. Хорошо? Все в порядке? Okay. So speaking then about our situation in the United States right now. You know that we are, do you mind if I just, not so formal. We're in what we call a period of transition between the presidential administration that now exists, the Obama administration, and the new administration, which will take office on January 20th of next year, in a few days' time. And this is a time in which Americans are thinking about things in new ways on many fronts, including relations, full disclosure, as we say. Yes. I was surprised by the outcome of the election on November 8th. Most Americans were surprised, including if the media reports are accurate, the members of Mr. Trump's presidential campaign team were also surprised by these results. And in the interest of full disclosure, so you know where I'm coming from, I did not vote for Mr. Trump, and in fact, signed a letter along with some 200 previous former American ambassadors endorsing Hillary Clinton for president. But we have a system in the United States, and it works. And that system is that once the people have delivered their verdict, once they have decided, as they did on November the 8th, then we begin a process, a tested and reliable process for the peaceful transfer of power from one leader to the next. And that procedure for the transfer of power from one leader to the next is one of the great virtues of the American political system. So these days, if you watch our television, and especially if you watch the late night comedy show, right? The Late Show, you've seen the Late Show. You will see this.
The Late Show with Stephen Colbert.
Yeah, well, yes, indeed. Or the other ones. There's several late shows. Right?
Or John Oliver.
Yeah. Well, you know what they're all talking about then? They're all talking about what you can expect from the age of Trump, right? Well, as with most countries, the principal agenda, right, of the new leader is not foreign policy. That's not what they were elected to do primarily by the voters, and that's not what they want to do. Americans almost never vote for a Washington insider. You know what I mean about Washington insider? That is someone who's worked a long time in Washington, who has lots of experience, a long resume in Washington. American voters don't like that kind of candidate. They vote for the other person, the person who's an outsider. And also, they tend to vote for the person, if given a binary choice between one candidate and the other, they usually choose the one with less, not more, foreign policy experience. And they certainly did that in this case. They voted for an outsider, not a government figure, and they voted for someone who had less foreign policy experience rather than more. Now, it's been true in American presidential administrations for many years now, since President Franklin Roosevelt, that the new president thinks about the first 100 days, like the first 3 months of the administration, in order to get things done in that first 3 months, first 100 days, to respond to the concerns of voters, to follow through on the campaign promises that they made when they were campaigning. And so Trump is going to try to do the same thing. And he has said that most of what he is going to do in this first 100 days has to do with domestic internal affairs. That's the normal course of the way things work. And so we can expect that he's going to spend most of his time, right, in that first 100 days, on the bread and butter economic issues, right, on which he ran for election and which he was elected. But American presidents don't get the luxury of not worrying about the world for very long, because the world has a way of coming in and forcing the president, any president, to think about the rest of the world. Because there are crises all over the world, in the Middle East, in the Far East, in almost every corner of the world, there is something going on that's going to demand the attention of the American president. And so it won't be very long until Trump has to, whether he wants to or not, to think about and do something about foreign policy. Now, for good or ill, good or bad, and you can tell me which one it is, Russia figured more prominently in the campaign than any other country in the world. Would you have really anticipated? How many saw the presidential debates? Anybody see the debate? Any of them? Right. Would you have predicted that one of the candidates would accuse the other of being a puppet, marionette, of the Russian president? Or that the two candidates would wind up arguing with each other? about the extent to which Russia was interfering in the presidential campaign and trying to influence the outcome of the campaign? Would you have predicted that? Maybe not. Not really. So you tell me whether that's good or bad. We can discuss that. So the question of what Mr. Trump intends to do about all this has raised a lot of expectations, in the United States, and I think you tell me here too about what he might decide to do. Am I right? Yes? Maybe not. Now, many of the positions that Mr. Trump took as a campaigner were very vague, unsure, and since he was actually elected, he has seemed to step back from some of those positions that he talked about during the campaign. And this is kind of normal, because when a candidate gets elected and starts thinking about, oh my God, Bush will win. In 2 months' time, I'm going to be the president of the United States. So you have to change from campaigning to earning your vote and your vote and your to thinking seriously about what you're going to do when you are responsible for the policy, especially the foreign policy of the United States. And what that does, it begins to change the mindset a little bit. Even for someone with as strong a mind as Donald Trump. Right. So he's thinking through some of these things. He is adjusting some of these positions that he took. And this is a natural phenomenon. So it can be hard to figure out exactly what to predict. You know, the crystal ball, so you look in and you see, it's hard to come up with that right now. But I try to put myself in the position of somebody like you, or you, as an advisor to President Putin in the Kremlin. Think about that. Writing him a memo. It's not bad. Yeah. Saying, Mr. President, this is what you should think about. This is what you should anticipate. So let's think about that for a while. All right? And the first thing you would write, maybe, is let's analyze his political situation in the United States. Now, it's very true, it's true, that his political situation is very strong. Maybe not as strong as, shall we say, President Putin's, but strong. He will have the presidency, and his party, the Republican Party, right, will head both houses of Congress. So, but the Republican Party that he heads, has a number of factions or groups within it. One group is what I would call the establishment Republicans. Right? These are people who have been around a long time, many of them in Washington. And they have very strong views and a lot of experience in matters of foreign policy and statecraft. Some of the figures associated with this group, I don't know how much you follow American politics, but Senator John McCain of Arizona, Senator Lindsey Graham from the state of South Carolina, Mitt Romney, who ran for president in 2012, 2012. These are establishment Republicans, people who have been Republican Party leaders for a long time. And they tend to be characterized as defense hawks. You know what a defense hawk is? Interventionist in foreign policy. There should be a strong American foreign policy, right? By the way, many of these people have been very skeptical, if not hostile, toward improvement of the relationship with Russia as it now stands. They're not much in favor of it, or improving the relationship. At least as matters now stand. Many of these people, including some that I just mentioned, did not vote for Trump. And in fact, opposed him in the Republican primaries and in the general election campaign. But yet, they too are Republicans, Republican Party. There's also a smaller group, but also an interesting group of libertarians. You know what libertarians are? You know, it's like Senator Rand Paul from Kentucky. These are people who they agree with Trump about one thing, which is we should have a foreign policy of America first. America first. Let the rest of the world worry about itself. We're going to worry about the United States. But they disagree with Trump on some of his policies, especially some of the more strong policies that Trump has taken on issues of counterterrorism and surveillance of your cell phone, right? Like things like that. They don't like that kind of thing. And then there's a third faction, or third group. And these are people who are loyal to Trump himself personally. These are his supporters. And when you ask them, what is American foreign policy and defense policy? They will say, it is whatever Donald Trump says it is on a given day. Today might be one thing, tomorrow might be different, right? So, and then you add in the Democrats, right? And there's still a few, there's still some Democrats. And then there's the media, the national media. And so, while Trump is in a very strong position, there will be some constraints, or at least some pushback from some elements of these various factions that I've been talking to you about. And let me give you an example. Do you remember a couple of the figures that I just talked about in the establishment group of Republicans? Senator McCain, Senator Graham. They have announced that they're going to lead a congressional delegation to visit Ukraine, Georgia, Georgia, and Estonia before Trump takes office. And they're going to hold hearings, they're going to hold congressional hearings in order to make sure that Trump does not pursue a new, quote, reset of relations with Russia. even before he takes office. So, this is a complex situation, right? It's not just Donald Trump. Donald Trump is important. He will be the president of the United States, and he will be in a very strong political position. But he cannot do everything just by waving the magic wand. He's not all of a sudden dictator Trump. Now, so there are all these distractions, right? But I do think it is possible, and maybe even probable, that we will see an effort on the part of Trump to improve relations with Russia. He has said he wants to do that. Mr. Putin has said the same thing. They have expressed a certain admiration for each other as strong figures, right? And it could be that an improvement of relations in the near term, maybe even a meeting between Trump and Putin, would be helpful to both of them in their domestic politics. It would be useful for Putin with his domestic audience, and probably useful for Trump. But we should remember a little history here, right? The last 3 American presidents, so Bill Clinton, George W. Bush, Barack Obama, they all started out where with the Russian leadership? Positive, constructive, high, right? And where did they wind up? Right? So, what we have, if you look at that recent history, is we have this. So if we see this occur, we should ask ourselves, we should say to ourselves, I think, it doesn't matter so much where you start, but also where you finish, right? Can you, let's say you do have a good start, can you sustain that start for a lengthy period of time? That would be an important question. And I think it will have a lot to do with whether Putin and Trump can really find common ground on several issues that are out there and need work. And I think you can identify some of those issues as well as I can. Ukraine, for instance, the situation in Ukraine, the situation in Syria, where the United States and Russia have had some serious disagreement. And we can talk about these issues in whatever detail you want to talk about. There's also the question of NATO, where Trump wants to go in his relationship with the NATO countries, what he and Trump can talk about with regard to, for instance, the situation in the Baltic situation, where we have, I think, a potentially difficult and even dangerous situation. We have far too many high-performance aircraft, naval ships, up there in a very constrained place.
You think we have a difficult situation in Baltic?
Yes, don't you?
Actually, I'm from Latvia.
You were from Latvia. Well, I was ambassador in Latvia for 3 years.
Yes, I know that. Why do you think that some words?
Here's the point. With all this aircraft, with all these ships, with all this, even if neither side wants to have a clash, what if something happens by accident? What if there's an incident?
You really think it can be?
Yes, I do think.
Really?
So, what I think it would be important to do would be to see if we can get the temperature down a little bit there. That we can try to have a little bit more transparency about what both sides are trying to do. Yes, the United States Latvia is a member of NATO, Estonia is a member of NATO and Lithuania, and the United States has a defense commitment to those countries under the NATO Charter. And the United States will fulfill that commitment. But Russia also has interest in the Baltic area. And we ought to work together, all of us, the three Baltic states, Russia, and the United States, and the NATO countries, to see if we can avoid a situation where something can get out of hand. Because I do think there's a danger of that happening. We can talk more about the situation in the Baltics if you want. But let's talk about a couple other issues briefly, and then we'll open for Q&A and discussion. Defense spending. Trump has said he wants to spend a lot of money on defense. Maybe as much as $100 billion. That's no joke. Yes. $100 billion. And that's a lot of money. And he will be in a position to get through Congress, if he wants it, a substantial increase in American defense spending, which would present Russia and also other countries, potentially China and other countries, with the question of, are we going to compete with that? Are we going to compete in the area of improving advanced conventional forces or even nuclear forces? And this is an area, this increase in defense spending, is an area where Trump and his loyalists actually agree with the Republican establishment that defense spending for the last 8 years has been underfunded in the U.S. by Obama, and that the American position in terms of its defense posture has been undermined and needs to be repaired. On Iran, you know, there's now a nuclear agreement in place, an agreement between the 5 major countries of the UN Security Council plus Germany on the one hand, Iran on the other, and Russia is one of those 5 countries, right? Concerning Iran's nuclear program and trying to put constraints on Iran's nuclear program. Well, Trump and many around him have said that's not a good agreement. It was a bad agreement when it was negotiated, and we're going to tear it up and walk away. There are others around Trump who say, wait a minute, not so fast. maybe the agreement is not as good an agreement as we could have negotiated if we were negotiating. But it's what we have. It's what we were agreed on with our allies, with Russia, and with Iran. And we can't just tear it up and walk away from it. Because where will that leave us? It will leave the United States isolated from its allies, from Russia, and with Iran still with the capacity to resume its work toward the nuclear weapon. So some around Trump are saying, wait a minute, not so fast. We need to think this through. We need to figure out whether keeping the agreement in place or doing away with it is the better approach. And finally, Afghanistan. Afghanistan is an interesting case also. On the one hand, Trump was very critical in the campaign of President Obama for pulling American troops out of Iraq, as Trump said, prematurely, which he said the pullout of the American forces from Iraq helped to bring about the rise of ISIS. So maybe that would argue for keeping the small number of American troops that are currently in Afghanistan still there, about 6,000, between 5,000 and 7,000 American troops. Not very many, but some. Others around Trump would say, no, we're through with this nation building. We're through with democracy promotion. We're tired of Afghanistan. We've been there for 15 years, and what do we have to show for it? So, pull the rest of the troops out, let it go. And if that happens, you, Russia, and the states of Central Asia, especially the smaller states, Kyrgyzstan, would have to think about the return of the Taliban to Kabul and the return of Afghanistan as a national security threat to Central Asia and to Russia, as it was before 9/11, when the United States went in and kicked the Taliban out. And one other note, these are all issues, right? We might talk about ideas for a minute. President Putin has often made it a part of his ideology to criticize what he calls or what might be referred to as the liberal international order, right? Globalization, free trade, democracy promotion, and individual over collective values. And that this is a reason for Russia to feel threatened, this liberal international order, and a reason for Russia to be strong at home and abroad in order to combat this conspiracy by the international order. The only problem now is, if it's a problem, maybe it isn't, you tell me. That's exactly what Trump said too. That was his campaign too, against globalization, against free trade, against democracy promotion. America first. all of a sudden, President Putin does not have an ideological adversary anymore. Does that make any difference in what, for instance, he says to you or to the Russian people generally about Russia's course in domestic affairs or foreign policy? Does it make any difference? Maybe so, maybe not. I don't know. But it's an interesting thing to think about. So these are a few of the ideas that I have, a few of the thoughts. I would like to hear what you are thinking about all of this. And about any of these questions or anything more that's on your mind. So I'm going to stop. And we will see whether we can have some questions answered and some dialogue with each other.
Okay, let me start. Thank you for sharing your views.
Thank you for that.
And recently we have heard much critics from Mr. Trump towards Latin American countries. And do you think that relations between the United States and Latin American countries, especially Cuba, are worsening?
Well, you're right in one respect. Trump has been very critical about Obama's decision to normalize relations with Cuba. And the problem with Obama's normalization of relations with Cuba is almost all of it has been done by presidential action. By proclamation, I, Barack Obama, we're going to reopen the embassy. We're going to normalize relations with Cuba at ambassadorial level. We're going to allow more travel. We're going to promote more Americans going to Cuba, more Cubans coming to the United States. All those things. But the trade embargo, right? The embargo on trade, the sanctions, if you will, are congressional. They're in the law. So Congress would have to act in order to remove that part of the issue between the United States and Cuba. And so this is another issue on which many around Trump are saying we should just, if this is Obama's proclamation, right, that we want normalization, right, we go back to where we were. If one president can do this document, the next one can tear it up. Now, will Trump actually decide to do that? I don't know. I don't know. Because there would be a lot of Americans, and even some Cuban Americans, who would not like that very much. There are many Americans who have welcomed the normalization of relations. They have welcomed the opportunity to go and visit Cuba. Many of them are Cuban Americans who can now see their relatives much more easily on the island. They can spend money for themselves and for their relatives there in Cuba, their family. And they like it. So it would not be free of political costs to Trump to tear up your paper there, right? You, President Obama. He might do it anyway, but it would not be without cost. Some people would be unhappy. Is he prepared to make some people unhappy? Wow. It's Trump Tower calling. Do you mind? Hello? He wants me to come by and interview your Secretary of State. Why not? He's interviewing everyone else. Would you like an interview? Your Secretary of State? Maybe I can arrange it. Now, as far as as far as Latin America, other than Cuba, I haven't seen Trump say very much. Have you? Did you see much about his statements on other parts of Latin America other than Cuba?
Not really, but in Russia people were shocked when he was congratulating people on Fidel Castro's death, and it was kind of,
He has an interesting approach to telephone diplomacy.
yes,
Doesn't
we
he?
heard that.
Yes. And not just on Cuba, but also talking to the leader of Taiwan.
And Theresa May, have you heard that? That he told her that if you are around, just, drop by or something like that.
Drop by, yeah.
Yeah.
So he might decide to do something with regard to Cuba that would not be very nice, at least to the Cuban government. And as I say, to many Americans who did favor the normalization policy. We'll see. That's a good question. Anybody else have a question or a thought?
And when we talk about Latin America, what about Venezuela and relations?
Venezuela is in trouble. I don't have to tell you, it's in trouble. The economy is coming to pieces. There's a lot of unrest, civil unrest in Venezuela. Venezuela will be an issue for the next president, but it's way down the stack of issues. It's somewhere down here. I have not heard Trump say anything much about the situation in Venezuela. He may address it when he's finally the president, but he may also leave that to his Secretary of State, whoever that may be. Including, what is your name?
Alisa?
Alisa, maybe Alisa. The Secretary of State, Alisa.
I don't mind.
You don't mind? Okay, well then you can worry about that.
Okay. Will do.
You know what, Alisa, you could probably do as well as a lot of these people he's interviewing. You know?
Yeah.
What else?
What about the wall between Mexico
Boy, oh boy.
Who's gonna pay for it?
Mexico. Didn't you hear Mexico?
They said that they will do that themselves. That's funny.
But now,
The wall.
Trump campaign says it was a metaphor. Like,
Well, exactly.
Exactly.
But every time he goes out to speak to the audiences again, he says it again. Right? So if it's a metaphor, it's a well-used and well-developed metaphor. Right? He's going to have to do something with regard to immigration from Mexico, because he's promised this to so many people for so long that I suspect he's going to have to do something. But whether he would actually undertake a project of that size and cost, when most of the people on the border don't want it. Many of the people who live in the closest proximity to the Mexican border don't, would be horrified if a wall stood between them and their family in Mexico, their business, right? So maybe it will turn out to be a metaphor. There are ideas floating around now of, well, maybe we'll need some more fences. And then we'll add some electronic sensors. And that'll be the wall. We'll see. And of course, whatever is done, the Mexicans will pay for it. We know that.
and don't you think that that maybe his whole campaign was a metaphor. We should remember that that electoral college has this.
Well, they will. Don't hold out. If you're hoping for a different result, December 19th, when the actual members of the electoral college go to Washington to cast their ballots.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, many of them are plotting something. Like
No, that's a rumor, and it's not a very good one. Not a very good one. There's also a recount.
Yeah.
They're counting the ballots again in 3 states: Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania. That isn't going to change the result. Yes, they will recount the ballots, but the chance that they would find enough ballots to make a difference, now, to be sure, the results in those 3 states were very thin, very close. And those were 46 electoral votes out of the 270 that are needed to win. And in fact, that was the difference in the election. Because all 3 of those states voted for Barack Obama. All 3 of those states had voted for every Democratic candidate since 1992. But he was able to reach in and pull them away. 1, 2, 3 from Clinton. So look, whatever you think of Trump, don't underestimate it. A lot of people have done that. And you know what his word for that is, or for them is, don't you? Losers. You're a loser. Do you know that in those, if you add up the votes by which his margin of win, right, in those 3 states, and my university at Texas A&M, we have a football stadium. For our football team, the Aggies, has 102,000 seats, a big stadium. You could take his victory margin in all 3 states together, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and it would not fill up that stadium. So it's less than 100,000 votes over 3 states in a campaign in which how many people voted? 150 million Americans. So by that measure, this was a very close election. By other measures, it's not so close. He has 306 electoral votes. Clinton 242. That's not very close. It's a solid majority. He needed 270, he got 306. Clinton, however, this is one of the ironies of this whole business, Clinton, however, and I'm sure you have seen this, got more actual voter votes than he did. You're saying, how can that happen?
2 million more.
2 million more than 2. The way it happens is that you take a state like California, the biggest state in the union by population, and Clinton beat him there 2-1. So she's running up a huge margin in the popular vote in California, and really the same thing in New York, a couple of other places. But you don't get any more electoral votes by doing that. You don't get any more electoral votes by winning by 2 million votes as opposed to by winning by one vote. Because, for those of you who don't know, but for president and vice president, we vote by state, state by state by state. And how many votes does each state get? Well, let's take a couple of examples. The current U.S. ambassador to Russia, Mr. John Tebb, Ambassador John Tebb, comes from Wisconsin. One of these small, all states have 2 senators, each one. No matter the biggest state or the small state, you have 2 senators. And then you have some number of members of the House, like the Duma, right, the lower house, according to the population of the state. So a big state like California has over 50 members of the House of Representatives, and therefore 55 electoral votes. Wisconsin has 10, as I'm saying. My home state, Texas, has its 2 votes for its 2 senators, plus 27 members of the House. Right? So if you want to win, if you want to get to 270 electoral votes, you have to win as many states as you can win. And most of these, in most of these cases, for each of these, for these states, it's winner take all. Let's take Ambassador Teff's state, or home state of Wisconsin. If you win Wisconsin by 1 vote, or you win it by 100,000 votes, you still get all 10 electoral votes from that state. Because it's winner take all by state. So if you're talking about Texas and where I come from, those 27 electoral votes, that's a lot. It's not the biggest, but it's substantial. If you win Texas by 1 vote, or by 1 million votes, you still get the 27 electoral votes. Because it's winner take all. So, what he did was he won enough states. He won enough states to accumulate those 306 electoral votes when he needed only 270. And Clinton lost too many states to get to 270. It's a matter of arithmetic. Sorry, you had a question.
So we heard a lot about Donald Trump from media, that he's just a clown and he can be a true leader. So, what do you think about that?
I said earlier that that is to underestimate him. And people who've underestimated him before have been wrong.
So
I didn't.
Your personal attitude is that?
My personal attitude is he's not a clown.
For sure.
He
He's going to be the next American president.
He sometimes acts like a clown with that crazy baseball cap and the hairdo and the whole thing, right? But he's a very shrewd and smart politician. You don't beat somebody like Hillary Clinton, who's been around Washington forever, who has a resume as long as your arm in foreign policy. You don't beat somebody like that if you're a clown. You beat somebody like that if you're smart, if you're shrewd, if you read the voters. And he read the voters, especially in these Midwestern states that he was able to pull away. Yeah, he read them very well. people, many of these folks, like many ordinary Russians, I suppose, say it's all well and good to talk to us about globalization. It's all well and good to talk to us about the new economy. It's all well and good to be adept at using that thing. It's all well and good to be young and be smart and be a university student at NGU. Yeah. But what about my job? How am I going to feed my family? How am I going to send them so that one day maybe they're an NGU? How am I going to meet the mortgage payment for my house? And in many of these states, there have been large-scale job losses, factories closing, jobs exported to places like Mexico, lots of other places. And Trump was very adroit at talking to people like that, just like I'm talking to you, and saying to them, you know what? You know what? You were right. You were right. All these fancy people from the university and from politics and from Washington, they've been taking you to the cleaners forever. You know what I mean by the taking you to the cleaners? How would I, a good Russian expression for that? They don't care about you. They've been taking advantage of you. Whoever they are. Does it matter?
Наконец, есть столько точно сходных путей развития, сходных успехов и сходных ошибок за последних 20 лет. О чем я старался поведать вам в настоящей лекции. Наши пути развития на самом деле гораздо более похожи, чем мы порой хотим признаться. Я надеюсь, новые страницы полезных и необходимых взаимоотношений между Россией и страной впереди. Спасибо за внимание.
Я попробую выступать в роли дискутанта. Значит, вот, во-первых, я бы хотела назвать выступление старой песни о главном, почему все равно это нужно изучать, и почему мы уже на протяжении 10 лет себе задаем вопрос, а что будет, если аудитория интернета обгонит аудиторию телек. Значит, первое, о чем я хотела бы сказать, напомнить всем присутствующим, что практики, которые мы сейчас обсуждаем, начали складываться совсем недавно. И 15 лет назад, а тем более 20 на начало 90-х годов, когда складывалась вот классная конфигурация, не было Яндекса, не было Мейла. Значит, в 97 году, там всего лишь год как начал работать Рамблер, не было сайтов органов государственной власти, потому что кнопка gov.ru вообще появилась в 1997 году. И дистанция между, например, 15 лет назад, 20 лет назад и 2011 годом, это там не только 15 лет и 4 избирательных цикла, но с точки зрения развития технологий и форматов диджитал.
And what about American national debt? If Mr. Trump says that this much money he's going to spend on defense?
You know what? I don't think he cares much about that.
Does he know about it at all?
Sure, he knows about it. Look, all of his companies are in debt.
He went bankrupt 6 times.
Yes. He said before, debt's a good thing. Debt's not a bad thing, debt's a good thing. You have to know how to, but what you have to know is how to manage it.
Wasn't it really smart of him to, do not take presidential salary? He doesn't. Okay.
What is $400,000 a year to Donald Trump?
Because
He spends more of that on his helicopter. See, that's another thing, another irony about all this, right? He's talking to you about your job. He's saying you're right. All these people have been doing these things to you, right? And he flies in on a helicopter. He lives in the Trump Tower, where he's rich and wealthy.
American dream.
Yes, here's the American. This guy right here. He's a living, walking, breathing American dream. Better him than some pointy-headed intellectual from the university. Yeah. Telling me I'm not very smart, that I don't understand the new economy, that I don't know how to use that thing very well, and therefore I don't have a job. Which one would you listen to?
Both.
Okay. Yeah.
So you claim that actually he's much smarter than we think he is, and maybe some his actions may appear strange or stupid, but actually there is a plan behind it.
What I said is he's a shrewd and capable politician.
So do you believe
whether or not he will be an effective president is a different question.
But do you
That
believe,
wasn't what you asked me. You asked me whether I thought he was stupid. No, he's not stupid.
well, no, my question is not about his stupidity or something. My question is about, do you think that there was actually a plan behind this strange phone call, Taiwan phone call? That basically this phone call undermined the whole strategy of
I have no way of knowing whether there was a plan. But if there was a plan, nobody else knew about it. He certainly did not call President Obama to tell him, well, you know what I think I'll do this afternoon? I think I'll call the president of Taiwan. What do you think, Brock? Should I do that?
Can we take it just a
He just said,
question?
yeah, take all the questions. He just said, give me the phone. Put her on. Why not? The lady wants to talk to me. Why shouldn't I talk? What do I care what people in China live in Beijing? You might say, is that the way to run the railroad? Is that the way to run the Oval Office? I don't know. We'll see. Maybe. Could be. That when he finally is inaugurated and sits down as the president, that there will be a set of more regular procedures. That there will be a Secretary of State by then, hopefully, maybe not, who will advise him and who he will listen to. There may be some young people just very much like you who will be asked to, when he gets ready to make a call, to send him a set of talking points for the call. Masha, do you have an interview with Trump as well? Which job are you seeking? Defense, okay. I understand I haven't spoken for. But maybe we're going to see more of this. Maybe this is the new foreign policy. just, remember what I said about the Trump faction of the, it is, for them, defense and foreign policy or whatever Donald Trump says it is. So if he wants to talk to Vladimir Putin, get him on the phone.
And talking about Vladimir Putin, are you interested in the next Russian presidential election campaign? What do you think?
I'm always interested in presidential campaigns.
But
And I'm of course interested. I've been working on and studying Russia all my life. So yes, I'm interested.
and what do you think?
Well, I'd be more interested in hearing what you think about that.
Not much really.
You don't think about it much.
I
You know what
I'm
that-
trying to.
You know what? That's the problem. That's the problem. The fact that you, as bright and as capable a young person as you, don't think much about it or is I think the problem that's facing your country. My country has plenty of problems. And I would wish that there would be a presidential election campaign in the not too distant future, in which there's a reason for you to be really interested. No matter whether you were going to vote for Trump or somebody, the Russian president, Putin or somebody else, that there would be a reason to believe that you should be interested. That how you cared about it and how your vote went will really make a difference. That's what I hope. And I think you will see it in your lifetime. You'll certainly see it in your lifetime. You might even see it in mine. How about that? That would be America. You started my life. Did you have a question or a thought?
Firstly, thank you for your lecture. It was great. Secondly, I'm sorry that my English is not as well as I want, but I hope you will understand me.
Prefer to use Russian or just you want to try your English? You're doing fine.
Yeah, I will speak English. My question is more about domestic policy, not international affairs. There is an opinion that if we look at the graphics, we'll see that the amount of votes for Republican candidate is the same in 2008, 2012, and 2016. But the amount of voters of Democratic candidate is much more lower than in 2008 and 2012. There is an opinion that the victory of Donald Trump is not about the uprising of silent majority or white males. It's about Hillary Clinton, her ties with corporations, about disappointment of Democratic voters. And there is an opinion that if the Democratic nominee were the Bernie Sanders, he'll beat Donald Trump. What do you think about that?
I think your question is half right, which is not bad. Half right. Your analysis, I think, is, and I haven't looked at the vote, is what you're in this way. How many more votes did she, or how many fewer votes did she get than Barack Obama? But here's the deal. If we look at every American presidential election since 1948, that's 1 year after I was born. That's a long time. Right. In all those elections that have taken place since Harry Truman was elected in 1948, only once, has a candidate of the same political party won 3 times in a row. That was George H.W. Bush, the namesake of my university school, right? George Bush School. The first Bush, 41. Reagan had 2 terms, Bush won a 3rd for the Republican Party. That's the only time that's happened. So, when the same party has the presidency twice in a row, 2 terms, Americans get tired of it. Right? In that same period, from 1948 to the present, on analyzing these same elections, you will see that in only one case, the same case, George W. Bush, or George H.W. Bush, sorry, the first Bush, 41, only in that case did a candidate with more time in Washington and more experience in foreign policy win. So, Americans always vote for the out party. They always vote for the outsider. And they always vote, they don't care about experience in foreign affairs. That's not what they're voters. So she had all those things going against her to start with. She was trying for a 3rd Democratic term. She was a Washington insider. She was the insider's insider. Been there forever. Well, she was a senator from New York, but where does a senator from New York work? In Washington. And she had all this foreign policy experience. Loser.
I'm sorry at this point.
And so, and let me just finish the
Having to read. Yes. Just for final remark. Now, we still have some time, but not much.
Okay.
We have to wrap up.
And she did not prove to be the kind of candidate who could overcome those liabilities. You know what a liability is? Yeah. She could not overcome the negative, all those negatives. She was not charismatic enough. She did not identify closely enough with voters to overcome that. And she found it very difficult to talk to voters of the kind we were talking about a few minutes ago. People in places like Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Michigan, who had lost their jobs, who felt that nobody cared about them, that all these fancy people with their advanced degrees and all of that had forgotten about them. She found it very difficult to find a language to talk to people. And so it all piled up. One thing, and you mentioned a couple of things with ties to the big corporations and stuff. Now about this, so that's where your analysis is right. Where I'm not so sure you're right is that Bernie Sanders would have been different. Maybe he would have. He certainly thinks he would have been different. It would have been different for him. And I think he had more charisma than she did. He might have been able to galvanize younger voters in ways that she could not. But after all, he was 74 years old, from a very small state, Vermont. He would have had negatives to overcome. So whether it would have been enough, I don't know. Well, speaking of enough, you've had enough of me, and you have things to do this evening, and frankly, so do I. So I appreciate very much the opportunity for you to come and talk with me. It's been a lot of fun for me, and I hope you enjoyed at least some of the things we talked about. And the one thing that I want to ask you to do is stay interested in politics. Don't give up. Look, it's coming your way. Maybe not as fast as you wanted to, but politics are going to change here, there, like they always do everywhere. And there will come a day, and it may not be too far off, when it'll make a difference for you to be interested again, and to care, to work on campaigns, political, and to cast your vote. So with that, again, thank you.